Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mizzou Hockey pregame show here from Jefferson City. I'm Ian Paprocki alongside Owen Backer. A weekend series coming up here between the Missouri Tigers and the Arkansas Razorbacks. We should be in for a good one. For Missouri, they're coming off a little bit of a rough stretch here, coming back from a 4-game road trip. So returning home, lost 3 of 4 on that road trip, including 2 games against Iowa on the road last time out. 2 big losses, 9-1 in Game 1, 7-3 in Game 2. What went wrong for Missouri in that series?
I mean, you can't pin it on just one thing. I think they'd like all facets of their game to be better, but ultimately I just think, one, the penalties, you're putting the other team on the power play far too many times, and then also just defensive breakdowns from the players we've talked to this week. I mean, it just sounds like the defensive structure was not where it needs to be at, and we've seen that in the lineup tonight because things are getting shuffled around a little bit on the blue line. So I think, it's every time we interview a player, what do they talk about? They talk about the systems. They talk about the defensive structure that this team needs to adhere to, not just from the blue liners, but also from the forwards, from everybody that's on the roster. And so I think they need to just get back to what has worked for them and kind of stay structured in their game.
Some positives to take away, though, there in that second game. Andrew Knapp with a couple of goals for Missouri. How big was that for him and for this team?
Yeah, Andrew Knapp this year he's been, good, but last year he was kind of this physical force on the ice, this dominant player that everybody always had their eyes on, and he hasn't really had too much of that this season, so it was really encouraging to see him score twice against a very, very good Iowa team. I think if he can heat up, he had a very good series against Arkansas last year, if you all will recall, so I think if this is a sign of things to come and he's really starting to heat up, this could be big for Missouri.
Yeah, definitely could use a hot streak from Andrew Knapp, a big piece of this team and a big piece of this offense. I think for, Missouri, it's still an adjustment at the D2 level. You're still playing these teams that you haven't seen before, being at the D3 level before. So, I think it's sort of a process. You're used to, a lot of winning, a lot of scoring, because that's what came to be in D3 the last several years. But, for the Tigers, it's still an adjustment process. And, it was a rough weekend in Iowa, but still a lot to learn from and still a lot of things to be optimistic about moving forward. I do want to talk a little bit about just the home road splits for this hockey team right now. They've struggled on the road this year, but so far in this rink where they'll take the ice tonight, 7 out of 8 have gone the Tigers' way. What do you attribute to the home success?
I think there's a lot of things. One, obviously the crowd, the fan base, it's energetic and it's a great atmosphere to play in. It's raucous, and so they clearly thrive off the adrenaline that feeds them. I also do think part of it is just they have played pretty significant competition on the road this year. They played the 3-game series in St. Louis, including games against Lindenwood, this Arkansas team, and Maryville. They had to play on the road again, against a very good Iowa team, and I think part of that is what you can attribute it to. But everything else is just they come out flying in front of the home crowd because they're energized and they're full of adrenaline and they kind of know what they're playing for.
Yeah, I think you kind of get into a rhythm, too. You get into a habit when you're playing games at home, when you're playing somewhere you're familiar with. You know what to expect. You make that 25, 30-minute drive down to the rink. You're in your own locker room during the intermissions. And just kind of little details like that, I think, can, play a pretty big part. We've seen that success at home this season so far for Missouri. Taking a look at the Arkansas side now. This is a team that has been very good this year. They beat Missouri already this year 9-1 back earlier in October. High-octane offense, a lot of guys who can score. The freshman Aiden Froelich leads the team in goals. He's been really impressive. You got some familiar faces that are veterans that Mizzou actually saw in the past, and Brendan Kuhn, and other guys like Trevor Borlace as well. What does this defense for Missouri have to do to be able to be successful? Because obviously they're coming off of 2 straight games allowing 16 combined goals in those contests. How do they tighten things up against this offense?
Well, I think it's all about puck possession, right? You need to be able to control the pace of play. And when Missouri does well, it's because they are dictating what is happening. They are fully in the pace of play. They're not allowing the opposing team to counterattack, anything like that. And so I think if Arkansas is allowed to get sustained zone pressure, if Missouri gets tired, part of that 9-1 loss against Arkansas is because it was part of that 3-game tournament, and Missouri was just exhausted after playing Lindenwood. I think they need to come out with energy. They need to establish a physical presence, and they need to keep the puck on their stick. They cannot allow them to set up in the zone. They cannot, and we mentioned this every pregame, cannot take too many penalties, cannot put yourself shorthanded and be undisciplined when you don't have to, because, like you said, there's a very lethal offense on the other side of that ice, and they will capitalize if you put them in that situation.
Speaking of defense, Mason Buddy on defense here tonight. He's a guy who played defense before college, but he's been mainly a forward with the Missouri Tigers. He's on D tonight. What do you make of that? What are your thoughts?
It's interesting, not just on D, but on the first pairing defense, which I find interesting. Like you said, he is a defender for his whole career, rather, until he got to college. I like that things are being mixed up. I think that head coach Bob Booker felt comfortable kind of subtracting Mason Buddy from that top 6 forward group because of the play of Fred Bramstead and how he's kind of going to fill that role, because the freshman has performed so smart and has played a great 200-foot game. He felt more comfortable putting Buddy on defense, but with the defensive lapses that have been present recently, like you mentioned, the 16 goals in 2 games against Iowa, you might as well try it, and Buddy's obviously still an offensive threat, and I expect to see a little bit more threatening offense from the Tigers' blue line tonight, and as long as he can continuously play solid defense along with that, I think they should be fine. I like this.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that. Moving over to our pick to click for this game, I want to get your thoughts here as the Tigers are set to face the Razorbacks here in just a little while.
All right, well, this is difficult. There are many options here. Andrew Knapp, like we mentioned, on a bit of a hot streak. Mason Buddy, could he score up from the blue line? Andrew Cassiopo has been solid. It feels like the first time the Tigers have had all of their defensemen dressed. But I'm going to go with a bottom sixer here. I'm going to go with Brett Zimmer, because if Missouri's going to win this game, it's going to have to be with all 4 lines, all 3 D pairings. They are going to have to cycle, control possession. They're going to have to grind it out on the power play, on the penalty kill, 5-on-5. Their bottom 6 is going to have to get to the dirty areas, get behind the net, get in the crease. And I think Brett Zimmer, who's been so good at that, he is a perfect prototypical bottom 6 player. I think he is going to score tonight and get it done.
Yeah, well, look, we talked about Andrew Knapp and how he started to get hot. And a lot of times when you have a guy who gets hot on offense, it can rub off on his line mates. So I'm going to pick Danny Rudman for my player to watch. Knapp and Rudman have built some pretty special chemistry in their time together on that top line. So I think, when Andrew Knapp gets hot, so does Danny Rudman. And I'm going to have him as my player to click here in this game. Before we go, score predictions. You've been on a roll this season. You've nailed 1. I want your score prediction for this game.
I like that on a roll is gotten 1 correct, but I'm feeling. All right, the Tigers are going to win this hockey game 6-4 over the Arkansas Razorbacks. You heard it here. Hammer the Tiger money line. You heard it right here.
Very dangerously close to my score prediction. 5-4 Mizzou is what I'm going to go with here. I think the offense is going to break out a little bit after a quiet weekend against Iowa. Promise I had that pick before you made yours. I'm not just purposely going close to you. But that's all the time we got here on the Mizzou Hockey pregame show. Be sure to stick around. Owen and Mason Heller will be on the call here tonight from Washington Park Ice Arena as the Tigers face the Razorbacks in Game 1 of 2 here in Jefferson City. He's Owen Backer. I'm Ian Paprocki. We hope you'll tune in tonight and enjoy some Tigers hockey.